The letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, thin and quiet, yet powerful enough to stop Daniel Harper mid-step. He had just come back from his morning jog, shoes still damp. When he saw the lawyer's envelope resting on the kitchen counter, for a moment he considered leaving it unopened. Every message connected to his father since the funeral carried weight. None of it ever felt simple. Daniel finally opened it, standing there as the words began to sink in. His father, Robert Harper, had created a trust fund, only for Melissa. Daniel read the sentence twice, then a third time as if it might change. It didn't. The trust fund was detailed, carefully planned, and generous. It would provide Melissa with long-term financial security, tuition support, living expenses, even future personal development needs, as the lawyer politely described it. Daniel's name appeared only once. Not as a beneficiary, as a footnote. The letter thanked him for his continued financial oversight and support of the family vacation home. Daniel let out a slow breath. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold as memories pressed in. That lakeside house in Northern California had once been the heart of the family. Summers spent swimming until sunset. His father grilling on the deck. Melissa laughing too loud, always the center of attention. Back then, it felt like home. Now, it felt like an unpaid bill that never ended. For 7 years, Daniel had covered everything. Property taxes, repairs, utilities, insurance. When the roof leaked, he fixed it. When the heater broke, he paid. When Melissa hosted weekend getaways with friends, Daniel stayed silent. No one ever asked him to do it. They just expected he would. Daniel sank into a chair, staring at the window as rain streaked down the glass. His father had always praised responsibility. He had called Daniel reliable, steady, the one I never worry about. As a kid, Daniel thought that was love. Now it felt like a reason to overlook him. His phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. "Did you see the letter? Dad really believed in me. I'm honestly so grateful." Daniel didn't answer. He set the phone face down, heart tight, jaw clenched. He wasn't angry, not yet. What hurt more was the clarity. His father hadn't forgotten him. He had simply decided Daniel didn't need anything. Because Daniel always managed. Because Daniel never complained. Daniel stood, walked to the sink, and stared at his reflection. 38 years old. A stable job in Seattle. A life built carefully, without help. He had believed sacrifice was temporary. That someday things would balance out. That someday had passed quietly. By evening, the rain had stopped. Daniel drove through the city without a destination, letting the streets blur together. His thoughts kept circling one question. Why was he still paying for a place that symbolized everything he was excluded from? When he got home, he opened his laptop. He logged into his bank account. The vacation home payments were lined up neatly, scheduled months in advance. Daniel hesitated for only a moment. Then he canceled every single one. It wasn't dramatic. No speech, no announcement, just a quiet click. But something shifted inside him the second he did it. That night, he slept deeper than he had in weeks. 3 days later, Melissa found out. Her call came early, sharp and urgent. "Why is the power out at the lake house?" she demanded. Daniel sat at his desk, sunlight spilling across the floor. He kept his voice calm. "I'm no longer paying for it." There was a pause, followed by disbelief. "You can't do that," she said. "That's Dad's place." "It was," Daniel replied. "Now it's a shared property. And I've been carrying it alone." Melissa scoffed. "So what? You're punishing me now?" Daniel closed his eyes. "I'm stopping." The line went dead. The fallout was immediate. Calls from relatives. Confused messages. Quiet judgment from people who had never once offered to help. Daniel didn't explain himself. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to. Instead, he met Emma for coffee that evening. They had known each other for nearly a year. Friends first, then something softer, unspoken. Emma noticed things. She noticed when Daniel held back. When his smile faded too quickly. "You look lighter," she said as they sat by the cafe window. "I feel strange," Daniel admitted. "Like I finally did something honest." He told her about the trust fund, about the house, about canceling the payments. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful, steady. "You didn't take anything away," she said gently. "You just stopped giving what was never yours to carry alone." Her words settled into him like warmth. Later that week, Melissa showed up at his condo without warning. She walked in like she always did, confident, irritated, ready to argue. But the space caught her off guard. Clean, quiet, simple. Daniel's life stripped of noise. "You have money," she said, looking around. "So why are you acting like this?" Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. "I'm acting like someone who finally understands the difference between love and obligation." Melissa laughed, but it sounded thin. "Dad trusted me." "No," Daniel said. "Dad trusted me to handle everything else." Ah, the words landed hard. Melissa's expression shifted, just slightly. Uncertainty flickered across her face, quickly masked. "So what am I supposed to do now?" she asked. Daniel met her eyes. "What I've always done. Figure it out." She left soon after, frustration trailing behind her like perfume. Daniel stood by the door long after it closed, feeling both shaken and calm. That night, he walked along the waterfront with Emma. City lights reflected on the water, steady and bright. "I always thought being needed was the same as being loved," Daniel said quietly. Emma stopped walking and faced him. "You deserve more than being useful." Something opened in him then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let hope in. What Daniel didn't know yet was that this single decision would force long-buried truths into the open. That the house, the trust, and the silence between siblings were only the beginning. And that choosing himself would come at a cost, but also with a reward he never expected. Because sometimes the moment you stop paying for what hurts you is the moment your real life finally begins. The lake house was silent for the first time in decades. The usual hum of activity, the laughter bouncing off the walls, the clinking of glasses on the decking was all gone. Daniel drove up that weekend to check on it, not out of obligation, but curiosity. He hadn't stepped inside in weeks, not since canceling the payments. The door creaked as he entered, and a wave of memories hit him. Summers with his father, Melissa splashing in the lake, quiet evenings, watching sunsets. It was all beautiful, yet heavy, filled with unspoken tensions and long years of carrying responsibilities no one else noticed. Melissa's arrival wasn't long after. She showed up, expensive sunglasses perched on her head, carrying the kind of confidence that always made Daniel pause. "You embarrassed me," she said, stepping inside without asking. Her tone was sharp, demanding, and a little lost. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He watched her glance around the empty rooms, noticing details for the first time: the peeling paint, the empty cabinets, the quiet that had replaced life. "You have money," she said finally, her voice tinged with frustration. "So why are you acting like this?" Daniel folded his arms. "I'm acting like someone who finally realized what belongs to them and what doesn't," he said calmly. He saw a flicker of doubt cross her face, a hesitation she rarely allowed herself to show. She was used to relying on him, assuming he would always handle things. For the first time, he wasn't. Melissa scowled, pacing the room. "Dad trusted me," she said. "No," Daniel replied. "Dad protected you. He trusted me to manage everything else quietly." The words hit her harder than he expected. She paused, breathing unevenly, and for the first time in years, she looked unsure. Daniel didn't speak. Silence stretched between them, heavy but honest. Finally, Melissa spoke, her voice softer. "What am I supposed to do now?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. "What adults do. Figure it out. Take responsibility for your life." The visit ended quickly. Melissa left, the door closing behind her with a finality Daniel felt in his chest. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For years, he had been invisible, the one who carried the weight while others thrived. This time, he would not. Weeks passed. The lawyer called with updates about the trust fund, and family members whispered their opinions. Some criticized him for being harsh. Others quietly supported his choice. Through it all, Daniel stayed steady, anchored by Emma. She didn't push him to justify anything. She simply listened, offered presence, and made him feel like he could finally breathe without obligation pressing down. One evening, walking along the waterfront, Daniel confessed something he hadn't said aloud before. "I was afraid that if I stopped giving, there would be nothing left of me," he said, voice barely above the water's ripple. Emma stopped, turning to face him. "There's more to you than what you provide," she said softly. That simple truth settled inside him, heavier and lighter at once. He had spent so many years defining himself by what he gave, not who he was. Daniel's days began to shift. He spent less time worrying about Melissa's choices and more time on his own life. He started painting again, a hobby he had abandoned in college. He took long walks, feeling the city pulse around him, noticing small moments he had overlooked while busy being the responsible one. With Emma, conversations stretched late into the night, honest and unforced. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through quiet trust, gentle encouragement, and the comfort of simply being together. Melissa eventually called again. Her voice was tired, a little fragile. "The trust doesn't last forever," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much you were doing." Daniel listened without interrupting. This time, he didn't feel anger, only a calm clarity. She wasn't asking for permission. She was finally acknowledging reality. "I'm sorry," she said, hesitating, "for taking it for granted." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase years of imbalance. But it was real, and that mattered. The lake house was sold the following spring. Daniel didn't feel loss, only relief. The money was divided fairly, and the house, which had been a symbol of unbalanced family expectations, was gone. As the seasons changed, Daniel's life grew more his own. Emma was a steady presence, her quiet support allowing him to explore who he was without fear of judgment. Their relationship blossomed in a mature, measured way. They shared laughs, quiet dinners, and long walks in the park. Daniel found that love could exist without obligation. That connection didn't have to mean sacrifice of self. One early summer evening, Daniel stood on his balcony, city lights twinkling below, reflecting on the months behind him. Emma slipped her hand into his, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "You okay?" she asked, sensing the weight still lingering in him. He nodded, feeling lighter than he had in years. For the first time, he said, "I think I really am." Daniel had stopped paying for a house that had become a symbol of obligation. He had faced his sister's anger, the family whispers, and the discomfort of change. He had chosen himself, and in doing so, he found peace. But more than peace, he found love, the kind that asked only for honesty, patience, and presence. Sometimes stepping away from what drains you isn't abandonment. Sometimes it's the first step toward freedom. And in that freedom, Daniel realized there was space for everything he had been missing: self-respect, calm, and a love that grew naturally, without expectation. The lake house, the trust, the years of carrying responsibilities alone, they were all behind him. What remained was choice, clarity, and the quiet certainty that he was finally living for himself. Emma squeezed his hand, and in that small human connection, Daniel understood that the best things in life were those freely given, freely received, and shared without strings. Daniel Harper had stopped paying for the lake house, but he had finally started paying attention to his own life. And in that choice, he discovered something far more valuable than property. Trust funds, or family obligations, he discovered himself. The kind of self that could finally love and be loved, not out of duty, but because it was real, honest, and true.